Hey, what's up, everybody? I've got another question to ask. When is it a good idea to have more than one, two, three, four, five, six LLCs? So I was actually on a strategy session with a client, and she was telling me about a couple of businesses that she wanted to start in different industries that she's getting into, and as well as the fact that she had just inherited a rental property. So that's the question we're going to dive in today's video. My name is Saluto Uba. I'm a lawyer who helps creative entrepreneurs protect their assets and save money. And we created this Business Owners Basics Bootcamp series. This is actually the last video in the series, but we created it as a tool for up and coming entrepreneurs as well as older business owners alike to brush up on the fundamentals and to relearn some strategies that'll be really helpful throughout your career. So let's get right into the video. And so we're going to really break this down into two categories, types of businesses and such as rental properties versus the type of work that you're doing in the business. So when it comes to a rental property, the main thing that we want to protect is, of course, if you had 10 houses under one LLC, if something happened to one tenant and they sued, all of those properties would be at risk because they're all owned by the same LLC. So the big idea there is that you want to separate your risk and you want to separate the ownership of all the properties into multiple LLCs. And so the way that a few people think about it, and the way that I prefer to think about it, is you want to think through what's the monetary amount owned by each property. So if you have 3 houses that are each worth $100,000, it might make sense for them to be owned under one LLC versus if you had 2 properties each that were worth $300,000. Then it would make sense that if you want to separate those two to protect and minimize your risk. And so the rule of thumb that I try to use is about $250,000 to $300,000 of property or value in each LLC. Or what people also do is they'll have single family homes all together in the one LLC, maybe 3 or 4 under one. And then if they have 2 apartment complexes, they'll put those under two. Put those 2 apartment complexes under the same LLC, and they'll start to group similar types of properties together just because the strategy that you're going to implement with those might be similar and it might make things more streamlined. But really you want to think through, how can I protect the assets and how can I minimize my risk in the event that something happens? And now the second thing that we want to think through is the type of businesses that you're operating through an LLC. And so for instance, if you had a restaurant that you're running with an LLC and you wanted to maybe add on a wine shop, those are somewhat complementary businesses, so it would make sense for the two of them to be in a similar LLC. And so also if you had a design studio or if you're a photographer and you want to add videography services, those are complementary businesses, so it would make sense for both of them to be in the same LLC. But for instance, say you're a designer and you want to open a bakery. Those are 2 different types of businesses that will have separate needs and will probably strategize in different ways. So it would make sense to separate those 2 types of businesses so you can mitigate your risk and protect from the possibility that something bad might happen that's different for those 2 types of businesses. So those are types of businesses and the ways that you would think through that. But also when we're thinking through different business types, it's the idea of what is an active business and what's a passive business. So when we say active, that's what you think of commonly when you're an entrepreneur. You're creating a product, you're doing a service for your clients or your customers, and that's how you make money. You're just providing a standard type of business. But a passive business is like a rental property that we talked about. Or maybe you have an LLC that receives dividends from stocks, or maybe you receive royalties from a book that you created. And so those are passive income sources, and that's a passive business. And the big idea behind that is that a passive business is not subject to self-employment tax, but an active business is. So you don't want to group those 2 things together because it's just going to make things more complicated, and there's a high possibility that you'll have to pay more money in a situation where you could have saved on taxes. So a big idea to think through is this an active business versus is this a passive business? And you want to keep those 2 types of businesses separate. So those are just some guidelines, some tips and tricks to think through. When do you need multiple LLCs, and how do you strategize around that? So if you'd actually like to work with me as an attorney, or if you just want to talk about some more different ways to think through this, I'd love to speak with you. Please feel free to reach out at our website, ubalawgroup.com. Again, my name is Saluto Uba. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I know the importance and the value of being a business owner. So just remember that I'm rooting for you. You guys can do it. We're going to make it. We're going to make this dream happen. And everything that you're hoping for is there if you keep on grinding and keep on working hard for it. So until next time, peace.